Hi everyone, in today's video we will cover past paper questions related to chapter 15, Reactivity of Metals. Okay, before starting the question, we have to memorize some of the basic concepts that are related to this chapter, and the concepts that are related to this chapter are about the reactivity of the metals. We have to remember the correct order of this reactivity series of these metals. If you see this reactivity series carefully, you can see two non-metals here, carbon and hydrogen. Why we have placed them in the metal series? Because we want to compare the reactivity of these metals with these two non-metals, because it will help us to understand the reaction of these metals and also the extraction of these metals. For example, all these metals that are above in the reactivity series from carbon, they cannot be extracted using carbon, okay? But we can extract the other metals that are below in the series. For example, we can extract the zinc from its ore by using carbon. Also, iron can be extracted from its ore by using carbon, but not the aluminium one, okay? So now let's see about the reaction compared to their reactivity. First of all, the reaction of the metals with the water. Here we are talking about the cold water. So in this series, only potassium, sodium, and calcium can react with cold water, and we are going to get hydroxide, for example, potassium hydroxide and hydrogen gas. Okay, so now after calcium, magnesium, aluminium, zinc, iron, they can react with steam, not with the cold water, but they can react with the steam. And what we are going to get over here, not the hydroxide. We will get oxide and hydrogen gas. For example, we are going to get magnesium oxide, but not magnesium hydroxide, right? Okay, now let's see about the reaction of these metals with the acids. So all those metals that are above in the reactivity series from hydrogen, they can react with the acid, and we are going to get a salt and hydrogen gas. For example, whenever magnesium react with HCl, we are going to get magnesium chloride and hydrogen gas, okay? But copper, silver, and gold will not react with any of the acid. Now, what about the displacement reaction? Displacement reactions are those reactions in which the more reactive element can displace the less reactive element from its solution. So here we are talking about the metals. So the metal that will be more reactive one can displace the less reactive one. For example, if there is a reaction between sodium hydroxide, okay, this is the solution, and then we react it with calcium metal, then there will be no reaction. Why? Because calcium is less reactive than the sodium, right? So it cannot displace sodium from its solution. But potassium can displace sodium from its solution. So if there is a reaction between potassium and sodium hydroxide, then we are going to get potassium hydroxide and sodium metal. Okay, I hope these points are clear to you. Now let's see each question one by one. So let's see the first question. The section of the reactivity series shown includes a newly discovered element symbol X. The only oxide of X has the formula XO. So this is the reactivity series and X is placed over here. And this is the formula of X. So it means X has the oxidation state of +2 because it has only one formula, that is XO. And we know that oxygen has -2 oxidation number. So it means X is +2. That's why they have cancelled and we have the formula XO. So now let's see one by one each option and we can see which option is correct. Okay, let's see option A. Copper is reacting with the X solution, right? Because it is written in the form of ion, so it means X is in the form of solution. So can copper displace X? No, that's not right because copper is less reactive than X. So this option is not right. Now let's see, X can displace copper. Yes, that's right. But if you see over here, the X is forming a 1 + 1 oxidation number, right? This ion is +1. So that's not right. It can only form the ion that is +2. So this is wrong. Let's see option C. X can displace iron from its iron oxide ore. Right or wrong? Of course wrong, because iron is more reactive than the X. So X cannot displace. So this option is also wrong. So we are just left with option D, and that is X react with the acid, and we are going to get X chloride and hydrogen gas. That's right. Why? Because H is below X. So it means X can react with the acid. So option D is correct. Let's see another question. The metal beryllium does not react with cold water. It reacts with hydrochloric acid but cannot be extracted from its ore by using carbon. Where is beryllium placed in the reactivity series? Okay, so let's see one by one each option. First of all, we have to see that metal beryllium cannot react with cold water. So which option is here on the top? Magnesium. Of course, magnesium also cannot react with the cold water. So all the option A, B, C, D can be right. Now let's see the second information. It reacts with hydrochloric acid. Okay, so it can react with hydrochloric acid, but if you see here, copper cannot react with hydrochloric acid. So all the options above copper can be right, not the below one. So A, B, C can be right. Okay, so now let's see the third information, that it cannot be extracted from its ore by using carbon. So all those metals that are below carbon can be extracted by using carbon, right? So zinc is below carbon in the reactivity series if you memorize those reactivity series. So you can know that zinc can be extracted using carbon. So this metal cannot be extracted using carbon, beryllium. So that's why beryllium, which option can be right? We are just left with option A. So option A is the correct option here. Let's see another question. Metal X reacts violently with water. Metal Y reacts slowly with steam. Metal Z does not react with dilute hydrochloric acid. What is the correct order of reactivity of these metals? Most reactive first, okay? So, of course, metal X will be the first one because it's react violently with the water. And metal Y reacts slowly with steam, not even with the water. So, Y will come after that. And then metal Z is not even reacting with HCl. So, it will come after that. So, X, Y, Z will be the correct series. So, we can write this one. A option is correct here. Let's see question 5. Element Y reacts with copper oxide to form copper. Element Y will not react with zinc oxide. Copper has no reaction with zinc oxide. What is the order of reactivity of three elements most reactive first? Okay. And we already know that zinc is more reactive than the copper one, right? So zinc, of course, will come first. But we have to see where we have to place element Y. So if you see element Y can react with copper, it means copper oxide, right? So it means Y is more reactive than the copper oxide. That's why we can get copper here, right? So Y will be more reactive, and then we will be, after Y, we will have copper. So zinc will come first because element Y cannot react with zinc. So zinc will come first, then we will have Y, and then we will have copper. So this is the correct order. So option D is right. Let's see next question. When zinc is added to an aqueous solution containing magnesium ions, there is no reaction. Which species has the greater tendency to lose electrons? Okay, so now let's see one by one each option. So when we are adding the zinc is less reactive than the magnesium ions, right? So that's why zinc cannot displace the magnesium. So which one has the more tendency to lose electrons? Of course, magnesium. Why not magnesium ions? Because magnesium ions already have lost the electrons. So magnesium has the more tendency to lose electrons. So option A is correct. Why not zinc and zinc ions? Because zinc and zinc ions are already less reactive than the magnesium, right? So magnesium option is the right option here. Let's see question 7. What is the balanced chemical equation for the reaction between calcium and water? So again, you have to memorize the reactivity series. And calcium comes third in the reactivity series and it can react with the cold water. So when any metal react with the cold water, we are going to get hydroxide and hydrogen gas. So for here, we have to remember the correct formula of that hydroxide. So calcium has a +2 oxidation state. So that's why we are going to get COOH2 as the formula. So B or D can be right, but if you look carefully, D is the right option because this is the balanced equation. B is not balanced, so D option is correct. Question 8. Which word equation represent a reaction that occurs? Okay, so let's see one by one. For this one, you have to again remember the reactivity series. So let's see sodium oxide when react with carbon. Of course, no reaction because carbon is less reactive than sodium, so no reaction. Iron and sodium oxide, again no reaction because iron is less reactive than sodium. Copper and iron oxide, again no reaction because copper is less reactive than iron. Now let's see carbon and iron oxide. Yes, this reaction can take place because carbon is more reactive than iron. So it can displace iron from its iron oxide ore and we are going to get iron and carbon dioxide. So this reaction will take place. That's why option D is correct. Let's see question 9. The equation for the reaction of metal M with aqueous zinc sulfate is shown. Okay, which statement explain why metal M react with aqueous zinc sulfate? Okay, so if M can displace zinc from its solution, right? So it means M is more reactive. So we have to see the option which says that M is more reactive or zinc is less reactive. So let's see, zinc is less reactive than M. Yes, right? Because M is able to accept electrons. Wrong. If a metal is more reactive, it means it is easy for it to lose electron, not accept. So that's why the reason given here is wrong. So option A is wrong. Zinc is more powerful reducing agent than M. Reducing agent means the one that can oxidize easily. If you see here, zinc is not oxidizing here. Zinc is reduced here, right? So that's why zinc is a more powerful oxidizing agent, not the reducing agent compared to M. So that's why this option is also wrong. C, zinc is more reactive than M. Wrong, because zinc is displaced by M, so it means M is more reactive. Okay, the option D, zinc ions can remove electrons from M. Yes, that's right. Why zinc ions can remove electrons from M? Because if you see here, M was a metal here, but now it forms the ions here. How it forms the ions? Because it gives it electrons to the zinc. So that's why it's easy for zinc ions to remove the electrons from M and become metal itself. So that's why option D is right option here. Let's see question 10. Which substance react to form hydrogen gas? Calcium and water. Yes, when they will react, we are going to get hydrogen gas. Silver and dilute hydrochloric acid. Silver after hydrogen. So, no reaction. Magnesium and steam. Yes, we are going to get hydrogen. Yes. Zinc and dilute hydrochloric acid. Yes, zinc can react with the acid. So, we are going to get the hydrogen gas in 1, 3, and 4. So, option A is the right option here. Let's see question 11. Which pair of elements reacts together most violently? So let's see one by one each option. Chlorine and lithium, chlorine and potassium, iodine and lithium, iodine and potassium. Okay. So we have to now recall the reactivity of these metals and non-metals. So remember that in group 1 metals, okay, if you go down the group, the reactivity will decrease or increase. Do you remember? It will increase, okay? It will always increase. So what does it mean? It means lithium comes first. So it means lithium is less reactive. And then after lithium, if we have sodium or potassium, so potassium can be more reactive one, right? So compared to lithium and potassium, potassium is more reactive one, okay? So first, we already find the metal. Which one is the most reactive one? Potassium. Now, let's see about the non-metal. Which non-metal is the most reactive one? Okay, among the non-metals, if you see, these are from group 7. So, in group 7, the reactivity decreases down the group. It means the most reactive one is the fluorine. Okay, and then we have chlorine, and then we have bromine, and then we have iodine. So, it means compared to chlorine and iodine, which one is the most reactive one? Of course, chlorine. So, it means the most reactive one, when they will react, the reaction will be more violent. So, which option is the correct one here? The chlorine and potassium, because they both are very reactive. So the reaction will be violent. So option D is the right option here. Question 12. Metal X react with steam but not with cold water. What is X? Okay, so it can react with steam. So calcium, of course, not, because calcium can react with cold water. Copper cannot react. So all the metals up till iron can react. So we have to find the other one, the sodium. Sodium can react with the cold water, right? Then we are just left with zinc. Yes, zinc is before iron, so it can also react with the steam. So zinc is the right option here, D. Okay, let's see question 13. Metal X is more reactive than metal Y. Metal Y is more reactive than metal Z. Which statement is correct? Okay, before going to the statements, we have to find the reactivity order, okay? Reactivity order for all these. So metal X is more reactive than metal Y. So it means X will come first, right? And then we will have Y. Okay, metal Y is more reactive than metal Z. It means, so the Z will come after Y. Because Y is more reactive than Z and X is more reactive than the Y. So X is the most reactive one, then we have Y, and then we have Z. So now let's see each option one by one. When metal X is placed in a solution of Y sulfate, there is no reaction. Wrong. Because X is more reactive, so it can displace Y from its solution, right? When metal X is placed in a solution of Z sulfate, a reaction occurs. Yes, right, because X is more reactive than Y and Y is more reactive than Z. So it means Z is the least reactive one. So X can also displace Z from its solution. So that's why option B is the right option here. Okay, let's see question 14. Which statement about the reaction of metal is correct? First, iron and carbon dioxide are produced when iron oxide is heated with carbon. Yes, that's right. Okay, because iron and carbon dioxide we are going to get because carbon can displace iron from its ore, and that is iron oxide. So option A is correct. We don't have to look for the other options. Now let's see question 15. 4 iron nails are added to 4 different metal sulfate solution. In which solution does a displacement reaction occur? So see this question carefully. We have iron here, okay? And we have another metal sulfate solution. So here we have to find that solution which is less reactive, okay? That metal that is less reactive than the iron one. Because here the iron is a metal and it is going to displace this metal, right? So copper sulfate. Yes, this option is the right option here because copper is less reactive than the iron, right? Magnesium more reactive than iron, so there will be no reaction. Sodium again more reactive, zinc again more reactive. So the only reaction that will take place is with copper sulfate. So A option is the right option here. Now let's see question 16. Silver is a less reactive metal than cadmium. Cadmium is less reactive metal than barium. So which statement is correct? Now let's see one by one each option. Barium does not react when heated with silver oxide. Okay, so let's see. Silver is less reactive than cadmium, right? And cadmium is less reactive than barium. So what does it mean? Silver, if it is less reactive than cadmium and also than barium, then it means a reaction will take place when barium will react with silver oxide. So this option is wrong because barium is more reactive. First, barium is more reactive, then we have cadmium, and then we have silver. Okay, remember that one. Now, cadmium displaces barium. Wrong, because barium is more reactive, right? So cadmium cannot displace it. Wrong. Cadmium displaces silver from a solution of silver nitrate. Yes, that's right, because if you see silver is less reactive than cadmium. So it means cadmium can displace silver from its solution. So option C is the right option here. Let's see question 17. Which gas is made when powder zinc is added to dilute hydrochloric acid? Simple. Whenever metals react with HCl, we are going to get hydrogen gas. So option C is the right option here. Question 18. Why is aluminium metal unreactive with air? Okay, so always remember that aluminium always forms a layer of aluminium oxide on its top. That's why it becomes less reactive when it is placed in air, okay? So that's why the option A is right here. It is covered with a layer of oxide. Whenever in the exam, they ask you a question about aluminium reactivity, that's why it is unreactive. Not about reactivity, but you can say unreactivity, okay? Whenever there is a question about unreactivity of aluminium, there is only one option, and that is about the oxide layer on aluminium. So you just have to close your eyes and just choose that option of oxide, okay? So it is covered with a layer of oxide. That is the right option here. Question 19. Which statement explains why aluminium appears to be unreactive? Again, you see, so you have to just choose the option of the oxide layer. It is coated in an oxide layer. That is the right option. Option A is correct. When a piece of aluminium foil is added to dilute hydrochloric acid, no effervescence is seen. Which statement explains why no effervescence is seen? So you see all the metals can react with HCl that are above hydrogen, but aluminium react very slowly. What is the reason? Again, it forms an oxide layer, right? So we have to find that word. Where we can find? Yes, in option B. Aluminium has a surface layer of aluminium oxide. See, so that's why option B is the right option here. Question 21. A piece of aluminium is dropped into dilute hydrochloric acid. No immediate reaction is observed. Which statement explains this observation? Again, the same answer. Can you find that answer? Yes. Aluminium is covered in an unreactive oxide layer. So option D is correct. Okay, let's see question 22. When aluminium is placed in dilute hydrochloric acid, there is no reaction. When zinc is placed in dilute hydrochloric acid, bubbles of a gas are immediately given off. Which statement correctly explains these observations? So again, they are talking about that aluminium is not reacting with the acid. Again, we have to remember that aluminium form an oxide layer, right? So can we find that option here? Yes, aluminium is coated with a layer of aluminium oxide. So option A is correct here. So option A is right. Question 23. Which statement about the metal zinc is not correct? So we have to see again these options and remember this series, okay? It forms an oxide more readily than iron. Yes, because it is more reactive than iron, so it can easily react with oxygen more easily than iron. So that's why option A is right. It is manufactured by the electrolysis of zinc blend. Wrong. It cannot be manufactured by the electrolysis because we can easily extract it by using carbon because it comes after carbon in the reactivity series, right? So we can use the process of blast furnace, okay? So that's why option B is wrong. So of course we have to find the wrong option. So it means the B is the wrong option here. So then let's see question 24. Chromium is more reactive metal than iron but less reactive than zinc. Which statements are correct? Okay, if you see the reactivity series, zinc is here, iron is here, and chromium should be in between zinc and iron because they say that it is more reactive than iron but chromium is less reactive than zinc. So it is in between them. Now let's see which statements are correct. First, chromium does not react with dilute hydrochloric acid. Wrong. Why wrong? Because if you see, it is above hydrogen, right? Hydrogen is here and chromium is here. So it means it can react with HCl. Chromium oxide is reduced when it is heated with carbon. Yes, that's right because it is after carbon, so it can easily be reduced with carbon. So that's why statement 2 is right. Chromium reacts with zinc oxide to form zinc. Wrong, because chromium is less reactive than zinc, so it cannot reduce zinc, right? So that's why the third statement is also wrong. Chromium reacts with steam to form hydrogen gas. Yes, it can react with steam because all the metals above iron and also iron, they can react with steam. So it's between zinc and iron, so it can also react with the steam. So which options are now right here? 2 and 4. So 2 and 4 statements are correct. That it means option C is right. Question 25. Element E forms an alloy, has a basic oxide, and is below hydrogen in the reactivity series. What is E? So, below hydrogen, of course, it's not a carbon, right? Okay, copper. It can be copper. Sulfur, of course, not sulfur. It's not. We are not talking about a metal, right? Oh, sorry. We are not talking about a non-metal. We are talking about a metal. So, sulfur, of course, rejected. A also rejected. So, we are just left with B and D. Copper or zinc. So, which one can form a basic oxide? Of course, copper. Because zinc cannot form basic oxide. It forms amphoteric. What does it mean? It means basic and acidic both. Okay, not only basic. So that's why B option is the right one. Okay, even if you don't know this one, you can see this one that it is below hydrogen in the reactivity series and only copper is below hydrogen, not zinc. So that's why again option B is the right option here. Let's see question 26. Some properties of metal J are listed. J does not react with cold water. J reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid. No reaction occurs when the oxide of J is heated with carbon. Okay. Now let's see these options. Okay, J does not react with cold water. It means it should not be sodium because sodium can react with cold water. So now we are just left with copper, iron and magnesium. J reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid. So it means copper is not the option. We are just left with B and C because copper does not react with HCl. Okay, no reaction occurs when oxide of J is heated with carbon. It means the metal should be above carbon. So which one is above carbon, iron or magnesium? Of course, magnesium. So that's why option C is correct. Let's see question 27. A metal has the following property. It does not react with cold water. It reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid. It cannot be extracted from its oxide using carbon. Between which two metals in the reactivity series should it be placed? So let's see each option one by one. Calcium and magnesium. It does not react with cold water. So calcium can react with cold water, but magnesium cannot, right? So it means if you place in between them, then it means this one can react with cold water. After calcium, above magnesium, all the metals can react with the cold water, right? So, but it does not react. So it means this option is rejected. Now let's see for iron and copper. It cannot be placed in iron and copper because the third statement cannot fit here. Iron and copper both can be extracted using carbon, right? So we cannot choose this option. Magnesium and zinc. Okay, this option can be right because magnesium cannot be extracted using carbon, right? And then zinc can be extracted. So this is between zinc and magnesium. So after magnesium, again, we can choose this option. If you see here, we have aluminium, right? So aluminium, this metal can be aluminium. So aluminium is the one. So we can place aluminium here. So option C is the right option here, that it cannot be extracted from its oxide using carbon, okay? And it's also react with dilute hydrochloric acid. So this option is the right option here, that is C. Let's see question 28. The statement describes how different metals react with cold water. Calcium sinks, fizzing and releasing a steady stream of hydrogen. Copper does not react. Sodium floats, fizzing and rapidly releasing the hydrogen. Zinc does not react but does react with steam, releasing hydrogen. Using this information, where should be hydrogen placed in the reactivity series? Okay, so of course, if you memorize, it should be before copper, right? Because copper does not react with the cold water also, right? And sodium can react, calcium, zinc, they all are more reactive. So it should be above copper. So where we can find above copper, so between zinc and copper, yes. So this option is right, between zinc and copper. So D option is correct. Question 29. The result of two experiments are given. Cobalt displays manganese from an aqueous solution of a manganese salt. What does it mean? It means cobalt is more reactive. Manganese displays silver from an aqueous solution of silver salt. So it means manganese is more reactive than the silver. Okay, now let's see. 3 more experiments are carried out. Third, cobalt is added to an aqueous solution of a silver salt. Manganese is added to an aqueous solution of cobalt salt. Silver is added to an aqueous solution of cobalt salt. In which experiment does a reaction take place? So let's see. Cobalt, if you add in a silver salt, yes, the reaction can take place. If you see here, copper can displace manganese and manganese can displace silver. It means cobalt is more reactive than both manganese and silver. So reaction 3 can take place. Manganese is added to the aqueous solution of cobalt salt. Wrong. So there will be no reaction. Why? Because you see, manganese is less reactive than cobalt, because cobalt can displace manganese, but manganese cannot displace cobalt. So 4 is not right. Silver is added to an aqueous solution of cobalt salt. Again wrong, because cobalt is the most reactive one. So both manganese and silver cannot displace cobalt, right? So only we are left with option C, 3, right? So 3 is the only right experiment here. So option A is correct. Okay, let's see question 30. The flow chart shows some properties of a metal. Okay, these are some of the properties. We will see one by one. What is the metal oxide? So first of all, see this metal oxide, when it reacts with HCl, it gives water and salt. And when it reacts with NaOH, it gives also water and salt. So what does it mean? It means this metal is actually is forming an amphoteric oxide. What does it mean? It means it can react with both acid and base. So aluminium and zinc both can form amphoteric oxide. So these two options can be the right one. So now let's see this one. So when this metal oxide is reduced, it forms a component of a brass. So remember that brass is an alloy and is formed from zinc and copper mixture. Okay. So when zinc and copper are mixed, we get brass. So of course, copper is not the right option here because it doesn't form the amphoteric oxide and also it does not react with the acid. So now we are just left with the zinc option here. So zinc is the right option here, not aluminium, because aluminium is not the component of a brass. So option D is correct. Question 31. A strip of aluminium is placed into a test tube containing aqueous lead nitrate and left for several minutes. Aluminium is higher than lead in the reactivity series. What statement explains why lead is not displaced by the strip of aluminium? Okay, so aluminium is not displacing the lead. So what can be the option? Again, if aluminium is not reacting, it means it has an oxide layer, right? So we can find that option. And this is option D. There is an unreactive oxide layer on the aluminium. So option D is correct. So this oxide layer make aluminium less reactive. Okay, let's see question 32. An experiment is performed to determine the order of reactivity of metal X and Y compared to the lead. Strips of each metal were added to separate test tube containing aqueous lead nitrate. The results are shown. Okay, so when metal X react with lead nitrate, there is no reaction, right? No change. But when metal Y react with the lead nitrate, we get a dark layer. It means that a reaction is taking place here. So what does it mean? Which one is the most reactive one? Metal Y. Why? Because metal Y can displace lead, but X cannot displace lead from its solution. So which one is more reactive? Y is more reactive, then we have lead, and then we have X, right? But they are asking about the least reactive one first. So which one is the least reactive? Of course, X. First, X is the least reactive one, then we have lead, and then we have Y. So it means option C is the right option here. Okay, let's see question 33. Sample of 5 different metals E, F, G, H, and J were reacted with dilute sulfuric acid using the apparatus shown here. Okay. So the volume of hydrogen gas collected after 1 minute was measured. The results are shown on the bar chart. Okay. So this is the volume of gas that was collected. So J has given the highest volume of a gas in the same time, right? In 1 minute. So it means it is the most reactive one. Then we have F. Then we have H. So J, F, and H. Where we can find J, F, and H? Yes, this option J, F, and H. And then we have E and then G. So that means option E is the right option because we have to choose the most reactive first, right? So J should come first. So option C is correct. Let's see question 34. The list gives the order of some metals and hydrogen in the reactivity series. Metal X is also included. Okay, this is the metal X. Which row shows the properties of metal X? React with dilute acids? No, because it is after hydrogen, so it will not react with dilute acids. So option A or B can be right. Okay, now oxide can be reduced by carbon. Yes, it can be reduced because it is after carbon, because hydrogen is after carbon. So it means X can also be reduced. Its oxide can be reduced by carbon. So option B is the right option here. Question 35. The ionic equation for 4 reactions are shown here. Okay. What is the order of reactivity of 4 metals W, X, Y, and Z? Okay. So let's see one by one. When Z react with X, we are going to get Z ions and X. It means Z is more reactive here. Okay. So Z is the more reactive one. Then Z is more reactive also than W, right? So Z is more reactive than X and W both. So can we find where the W and X both come after Z? So here is Z, right? And W and X come after here, right? Same here, it is coming after this. But here, if you see, X and W are before Z. So it means only C or D option can be right because Z is more reactive than X and W. So this C or D option can be right. So now let's see which option is right. So when X react with W, there is a reaction taking place. So it means X is more reactive than W. So we have to find where X is before W. So here, X is before W, right? So it means the option C can be right. Because here X is not before W. So option C is the correct option here. We don't have to look for the other options, okay? So option C is the right option here. Question 36. The ionic equations represent the reaction between 4 metals P, Q, R, and S and solution of the salts of the same metals. Okay. What is the correct order of the reactivity of metals? So we have to find the most reactive one and the least reactive one. So now let's see first. P and Q, no reaction. Okay. It means P is less reactive than the Q because there is no reaction. So P should come after Q. Can we find P is after Q? No. Okay. Option A is wrong. Then P is here after Q, P is here after Q, and also P is here after Q. So B, C, D option can be right. Now let's see the next one. If there is a reaction between R and P, the reaction is taking place. It means R is more reactive than the P ions, right? So R is more reactive than P. So we have to choose where R comes before P. So if you see R is before P, right? Again here R is before P. But here it's not. So it means B or C can be right. Now we are just left with B and C. So let's see next. Q and S ions, when react, we get a reaction, right? So it means Q is more reactive than S. So Q is more reactive than S. Q is more reactive than S. Okay, again B and C can be right. Now let's see this one. S is more reactive than P because S can displace P, right? Can you see here that we are getting the metal here? So S is more reactive than P. Again, let's see here where we can find S before P. Again, B and C are right. So we have to find something else that can give us the right answer. So S is also more reactive than R, right? So let's see, S is before R. Here S is after R. Can you see R is before? So it means we are just left with option C. So option C is correct here. So this is how you can deduce the options. And then you can find the correct option. So the option C is the correct option here. Let's see question 37. Part of the reactivity is shown potassium, X, calcium, Y, and aluminium. Which metals are represented by X and Y? Okay, so copper, of course, not. Because it should be above calcium, right? Sodium, yes. Sodium is before calcium. So sodium, B or C option can be right. Now let's see for this one. Before aluminium, it cannot be silver because silver is the least reactive one. So it can be magnesium. So that's why option B is the correct option here. Let's see question 38. The diagram shows what happens when 3 different metals are added to water, X, Y, and Z. Z is giving you the flame. There's a bubble of gas with X, and Y, no reaction. Okay, so we have to find what is X, Y, and Z. So Z is the most reactive one, right? So let's see first Z. So it can be potassium, copper, or calcium. Of course, it can be potassium because potassium reacts violently, right? So potassium options are right, A or B. Now let's come to word Y or X. First come for X, okay? So copper, of course, it cannot react with the water. Cold water, only calcium can react, right? So that's why calcium is giving you the bubble of gas. So A option can be the right option because X is the calcium and no reaction means it's copper. So that's why option A is correct. Question 39. Which row identifies the properties of zinc? Thermal conductivity, good. Yes. So A or B can be right. React with dilute acid, yes, it can react. So option A is correct option here. Question 40. A metal M is between sodium and magnesium in the reactivity series. Okay, sodium and magnesium, of course, it's calcium, right? So you have to memorize this reactivity series. Even if you don't know, we can find still the answer. Which reaction occur with M and its oxide? So M react with steam. Yes, that can be right because it's above magnesium. So yes. And M can be extracted by heating its oxide with carbon. Wrong, okay? Because it is above magnesium and magnesium is also above carbon. So it cannot be. So no and yes are the right option. That is C, okay? Yes and no. So C option is right here. Question 41. Which row describes the reaction of magnesium hydroxide and magnesium oxide? Okay. So magnesium hydroxide, let's see effect of heat on magnesium hydroxide. So of course, remember when there will be heat, magnesium hydroxide will break down into magnesium oxide. Okay, so it will form magnesium oxide. A and B option can be right. Now, effect of heating oxide with carbon. So magnesium oxide will not react with carbon, right? Because it is more reactive than the carbon. So carbon cannot displace magnesium oxide. So there will be no reaction. So that's why B option is the right option here. That is, it will form magnesium oxide and there will be no reaction. So B option is correct. Let's see question 42. Silver is below copper in the reactivity series. Which row describes the reaction of silver? Reaction with steam. No reaction, of course, because only up till iron they can react with the steam. So it is below copper, no reaction. Reaction with dilute hydrochloric acid, again no reaction because it is below copper. So it will also not react with copper. Copper, silver, and gold, they cannot react with the acid. So that's why option A is correct. Question 43. Elements in group 1 of the periodic table react with water. Which row describe the products made in the reaction and the trend in the reactivity of the elements? So product, what are made? They are the hydroxides, okay, metal hydroxide and hydrogen. So A or B can be right. Now let's about the trend in the reactivity. The reactivity increases down the group, okay. So for metals, the reactivity increases down the group. So that's why option B is the correct option here. Question 44. Metal X is added to a colorless aqueous solution of sulfate of metal Y. Question 44. Metal X is added to colorless aqueous solution of the sulfate of metal Y. A colorless solution is formed and metal Y is deposited at the bottom of the beaker. Which row describe element X and Y and their relative reactivity? Okay, so X can displace Y because we can see a colored solution, right? So if there is a colored solution, so it means which metal is actually a transition metal. Of course, metal X, if you add into a colorless solution of metal Y, so it means metal Y is not a transition metal here, right? It's actually X, because X, after reaction, X is forming the solution. Now Y is already displaced, right, from the solution. So it means X is actually a transition metal. So A or B option can be right. Now, which one is more reactive? Of course, X is more reactive than Y. That's why it displaced the Y from its solution. So option A is the right option here. Question 45. The equations show the reaction between a halogen and aqueous bromide ions. Which word completes gap 1, 2, and 3? Okay. So this is bromine, right? Ions. So it can be only displaced. This is a displacement reaction, right? So displacement reaction only takes place between a reactive element and the less reactive ions. So this should be more reactive than this ion. So who is more reactive than bromine? Of course, it can be chlorine or fluorine. So we have chlorine option here. So A or B can be right. So 1 is chlorine. Okay, let's see for 2. So now bromine is in the aqueous solution. So when bromine is in the aqueous solution, there is no color, right? So the solution should be colorless. But when it becomes bromine, okay, so the bromine will give you an orange-brown color. So that's why option B is the right option here. So option B is correct. Question 46. Which row shows the correct order of reactivity of the 4 named metals? So for that, you have to memorize the correct order of this series. So let's see magnesium. If you see all these options, of course, magnesium is the most reactive one, not the silver. Okay, after magnesium, we can see these 2 options. Which one is more reactive, copper or zinc? Of course, zinc is more reactive, right? So option B, of course, is the right option here. Question 47. Y displaces X from its aqueous sulfate. It means Y is more reactive. X does not displace W from its aqueous sulfate. It means X is again less reactive than Y and W both. Okay, X displaces Z from its aqueous sulfate. Oh, okay, but X is more reactive than Z. What does it mean? It means Z is the least reactive one. Then we have X. And then we have Y or W, anyone can be. Okay, so now Y or W, anyone can be first. So Y or W we can find here only, that is A or B. Okay, so W is the more reactive one. Then we have Y, yes, because Y is more reactive than X. And then we should have X, and then we should have Z. So that's why option B is the right option here. Question 48. The properties of 4 metals are listed. Metal W does not react with dilute hydrochloric acid. Metal X react with dilute hydrochloric acid. Metal Y displaces metal X from an aqueous solution of its ion. Metal Z reacts with water and dilute hydrochloric acid. So it means metal Z is the most reactive one. Okay, so we can displace Z, C and D option can be right? So now let's see about this one. Which options are correct? XYW or YWX? Okay. So let's see, metal W does not react with dilute hydrochloric acid. So it means W is the less reactive one. And Y, if you see, X reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid. So it means X should come before W. Where we can find X before W? Of course, in both the one, we can find X before W, right? So now we have to look for Y actually. Metal Y displaces metal X. It means Y should be before X. So where we can find Y before X? Of course, in option D. Y is before X, so that's why option D is the correct option here. Okay, let's see question 49. The reaction of 4 metals W, X, Y, and Z are listed. Metal W displaces metal X from the oxide of metal X. It means W is more reactive than X because it can displace X from its oxide. Metal Y has greater tendency to form positive ions than metal W. It means metal Y is more reactive than W. So Y is more reactive, then we have W less reactive, and the least reactive one is X. Now let's see the third statement. Aqueous ions of metal Z are reduced by metal X. What does it mean? It means X is more reactive than Z. So now we have to find the correct order from least reactive to the most reactive one. So which one is the most reactive one and which one is the least one? If you see here, Z is the least reactive one because Z is reduced by X and X is reduced by W, right? And then W can be reduced by Y because Y has the more tendency. So Y is the most reactive one and Z is the least reactive one. So C or D option can be right. So first Z, Then we have X, okay, so that's why D option is correct. And after X, we have W, and then after W, we have Y. So that's why option D is the correct option here. Question 50. Calcium reacts with cold water to produce hydrogen. Lead reacts slowly when heated in air to form an oxide, but has almost no reaction with steam. Silver does not react with either air or water. Zinc reacts when heated with steam to produce hydrogen. What is the order of reactivity starting with the least reactive? So we have to find the least reactive one. Of course, the least reactive one here should be silver, not the calcium. If you memorize this reactivity series, okay? And you have to look also here, because calcium can react with cold water. But if you see silver does not react with either water or air, so it means it is the least reactive one. So C or D can be right, okay? Now let's see about the next one, which is the least reactive, lead or zinc. Of course, lead is the least reactive one compared to zinc, because if you see, zinc can react with steam here, right? But lead cannot react with steam. So lead should come here. It is less reactive, and then we should have zinc, and then at the last we will have calcium. So option C is the right option here. Okay, let's see question 51. P, Q, R, and S are 4 metals. P displaces Q from a solution of its sulfate. So it means P is more reactive than Q. Q reacts with hydrochloric acid and can be extracted from its ore using carbon. So it means the Q is reactive, but it is less reactive than the carbon because we can extract it by using carbon, okay? So R does not react with hydrochloric acid. So R is less reactive. So P is more reactive. Then we have Q, and then after Q we have R. So the carbonate of S does not decompose when heated strongly. Remember that the carbonates or the salts of the metals which are very strong or in reactivity, usually they cannot be broken or they cannot be decomposed by using the heat. Okay, so it means S is a very strong metal. That's why its carbonate is also very strong and we cannot decompose using heat. So we think that P should come before Q, right? So we have to see where the P is before Q. So in this option A and in C option, P is before Q, right? Because P is displacing Q, so it should be before Q. Now Q reacts with hydrochloric acid, but R does not. So it means Q is more reactive than R. So we have to check where Q comes before R. So if you see that Q is, can you see here? Q is after R. So it means this is wrong. But here the Q is before R. This is the least reactive one, R, right? And Q is before that. So it means S is the most reactive one. Then we have P, then Q, and then R. So that's mean C is the right option here. Let's see question 52. 4 metals W, X, Y, and Z are separately reacted with water and dilute hydrochloric acid. The results are shown. What is the order of reactivity of the 4 metals starting with the least reactive? Okay, so now we have to see which one is the least reactive one here. So if you see, there is no reaction of X with water and also with dilute hydrochloric acid. It means that this one is the least reactive one. So A or B option can be right. Now let's see for the second least reactive one, that is more reactive than X but less reactive than the other one. So we have to see another one, the Z. If you see here, Z has no reaction with water, but it has a reaction with dilute hydrochloric acid. So it means Z is the second one that is least reactive. So after X, we will have Z here. So it means B option is the right option here. We don't have to look for the other options. So Y is the most reactive one. You can also see here that it is fizzing vigorously and also fizzing violently when it reacts with water and dilute hydrochloric acid respectively, right? So that's why B option is the correct option here. Let's see question 53. P, Q, R, and S are metals. P reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid forming hydrogen. Q reacts violently with water. R reacts with water to give hydrogen. S is formed by heating its oxide with carbon. Which row identifies the metal? So we have to find the metals one by one. First of all, we will look for the P. P reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid forming hydrogen. So it means all the metals that are above hydrogen. So copper cannot be the option, but B, C, D can be right because zinc and iron are in the reactivity series. If you see, they are before hydrogen, right? They appear before hydrogen. So that's why B, C, D option can be right. Now let's see for Q. Q reacts violently with water. So if it reacts violently with water, we can have only 3 options here that are reacting with the water, and among them, potassium is the one that reacts violently. So if you see here, we have magnesium, sodium, and potassium. So sodium or potassium can be right, but most probably potassium is right, not sodium. Magnesium cannot react with the cold water. It only reacts with steam. Okay, so now D is also rejected. So we are just left with C and D. So we can see the other options also. Okay, but probably it will be D because potassium reacts violently with water, but we can see other options. S is formed by heating its oxide with carbon. So if you see here, we have magnesium and zinc. So only those metals oxide can react with carbon whose reactivity is less than carbon. So if you see after carbon, we have zinc, but magnesium is before carbon, right? You can see over here. So it means D is the right option here because zinc oxide can be extracted. We can extract the zinc from its oxide using carbon. So option D is correct. Let's see question 54. Four metals, iron, copper, magnesium, and Y are heated separately with their oxides. The results are shown here. Okay. What is the order of reactivity of the metals least reactive first? So we have to write the one that is least reactive. If you see here, copper and iron has no reaction over here, right? So it means they both are less reactive. But if you remember the reactivity series, copper is least reactive compared to iron. So copper is the least reactive one here. Okay, it will appear first and then we have iron. Okay. After iron, so here if you see option A can be the right option because here Y comes before iron. So it is not right because Y still has some reaction with copper oxide and iron oxide. It means it is more reactive than copper and iron. So that's why, but not more reactive than magnesium because there is no reaction with magnesium. If you see, Y has no reaction with magnesium oxide. So it means magnesium is the most reactive one, then we have Y, then we have iron, and then we have copper, the least reactive one. So option A is the right option here. Let's see question 55. The reaction of metal P, Q, R, and S are shown. What is the order of the reactivity of the metal? So we have to choose the least reactive first and most reactive should come at the end. So let's see one by one. P has no reaction with water and also with HCl. So it means it is the least reactive one compared to Q, R, and S. So R, a P, okay? So the P is the least reactive one where we can find P, A, or B. So A or B option can be right. Now let's see for between S and Q, which one is the least reactive one. So if you see here, S is reacting very slowly, but Q is reacting just slowly. So it means S is less reactive, right? And then we have Q. So Q is a little bit more reactive compared to S. So S should appear first because it is the least reactive. And then we have Q. And then R being the most reactive one, okay? Because it is reacting vigorously with hydrochloric acid and also with the water. So now which option is right over here? Of course, option A. So option A is correct. Question 56. An iron nail is added to aqueous copper sulfate and a different iron nail is added to aqueous magnesium sulfate. The results are shown here. So if you see, there is no reaction between iron and magnesium sulfate because iron is less reactive compared to magnesium. So it cannot reduce magnesium from its solution. So that's why there is no reaction here, but the reaction between iron and copper sulfate is taking place. So which statement are correct? Let's see one by one. Copper atoms are oxidized more easily than magnesium atoms. So oxidation means the loss of electrons. But magnesium is more reactive. So it means magnesium will oxidize more easily compared to copper atoms. So that's why this option is wrong. Copper atoms are reduced more easily, yes, than iron ions. That is wrong. Then iron, but not ions, okay? So copper atoms can easily be reduced compared to iron atom, but not its ion because iron ions have already lost the electrons. So it is more easy for iron ions to accept the electrons compared to copper atoms, okay? Now let's see for the C. Iron atoms are oxidized more easily than copper atoms. Yes, this is right because iron is more reactive compared to carbon, so it will release the electrons more easily compared to copper atoms. So that's why option C is correct. Let's see question 57. 3 students X, Y, and Z are told that solid P reacts with dilute acid and also conduct electricity. The table shows the student's suggestion about the identity of P. Which students are correct? So it reacts with dilute acid, so it means copper is not the right option. So X, wherever we will find X, these options are wrong. A and B is not right. So we are just left with Z and C and D. So if you look carefully here, we have Y, that is iron. So C option can be right because Iron can react with dilute acid and it is also a very good conductor of electricity. Graphite also a good conductor of electricity, but it cannot react with dilute acid. So the option C is the right option here. Question 58. Reaction of three metals and their oxides are shown over here. Okay, what is the order of reactivity of these metals from most reactive to the least reactive? So if you add dilute hydrochloric acid to the metal, 1 and 2 will react but 3 will not. So it means the least reactive one is the 3. So where we can find the option 3 in A and in C, because the least reactive one we have to write at the end. So A or C can be right. Now we have to see which one is more reactive, 1 or 2, or 2 is more reactive or 1 is more reactive. So let's see one by one. 1 can react with dilute hydrochloric acid and 2 also can react, right? But let's see heat metal oxide with carbon. So we can heat the metal oxide of 1 with the carbon. It means it is less reactive compared to carbon. But let's see about 2. The 2 cannot be extracted using carbon. So it means 2 is more reactive than carbon. What does it mean? It means 2 is the most reactive one. Then we have 1 and then we have 3. So 2, 1 and 3. That is option C. So option C is the correct answer over here. Let's see question 59. A student investigated the reaction of 4 metals R, S, T and U with solution of their salts. The results are given in the table. Okay. What is the order of reactivity of metals most reactive first? So we have to find the most reactive first over here. So if you see here, R is reacting with S nitrate and then there is a reaction. What does it mean? It means R is more reactive than S, right? R also reacts with T nitrate and then there is a reaction. It means R is also more reactive than S and T both. Okay, so we have to find first. Don't look for the other options so you don't get confused. First of all, we have to eliminate the options in which R is after S or T. Okay, R should come before S and T because most reactive first, we have to write first. Okay, so R should appear before S and T. Okay, R is before S and T, right? So A option can be right. R is before S and T. B option can be right. R is not before S and T, right? So C cannot be correct. R is before S and T here. So A, B or D option can be right. Now let's see for the third one. S, when react with the U nitrate, there is no reaction. What does it mean? It means that U is more reactive compared to S. So we have to find where U comes before S. So if you see here, U appears after S. So this is wrong. A is not the right option. U appears before S. So B option can be right. U appears before S, right? So C, B or D option can be right. Now let's see for this one. When T reacts with U, there is a reaction. So it means T is more reactive than U. So T should appear before U. Can you see here? T is before U? Yes, right. But here T appears after U. So D is not correct. So we are just left with option B. So option B is the right answer here. I hope this is clear to you that how I solved this question. Question 64 metals Q, R, S and T are each added to separate samples of water, steam and dilute hydrochloric acid. The results are shown here. Okay, which statements are correct? R is the least reactive metal. Let's see here. R has no reaction with water, no reaction with steam and then no reaction with dilute hydrochloric acid. So it means it is the least reactive one. Yes, that's right. T could be potassium. Let's see for the T. T has a fast reaction with the water. Okay, that's right. Explode when it reacts with the steam and with hydrochloric acid also. Yes, that's also right. T could be potassium. Now let's see for S. S is more reactive than Q and R. Let's see where is S. S has no reaction with water. But if you see Q has a slow reaction with water, it means Q is more reactive than S. So that's why this statement is wrong. Now let's see for the fourth one. Metals generally react faster with steam than they react with water. Yes, that's right, because water, the steam is in the gaseous form, right? So there will be more heat. So the reaction will be faster. So that's why statement 1, 2 and 4 are right. And that is option A. So option A is correct here. Question 61. 4 metals P, Q, R and S are added to separate aqueous solution of their ions. The results are shown. Okay, so these are the results. Let's see what's happened. What is the order of reactivity of the metals most reactive first? So we have to write the one that is most reactive. So if you see this P, it reacts with the P solution. Okay, that's fine. There should be no reaction. But P is less reactive than Q because there is no reaction. But it is more reactive than R and S, right? So we don't have to look for other options. R and S are less reactive, whereas Q is the most reactive one. So where we can find Q? Yes, Q is here. So A and B, Q is the most reactive. Then after Q, we should have P. So yes, In first option A, we had P appears after Q. So that's why I think A is the right answer here. Q, P, and then we will have S and R. We don't have to look for S and R, that which one is more reactive. But even if you want to see, you can see that R is not reacting with any one of them. So R is the least reactive one. Again, so A option is the right option here. Let's see question 62. Four metals, zinc, Am, copper, and magnesium are reacted with aqueous solution of their nitrates. The results are shown here. Okay. What is the order of the reactivity of these four metals, starting with the most reactive one? So if you just look at the option A, B, C, and D, you can see that copper and magnesium are the options given here. And we know copper is the least reactive among the metals. So magnesium can be the right option. So C or D can be right. Now we have to check that which one, M is more reactive or zinc is more reactive. So let's see here. If you see zinc, when react with M, it can displace M nitrate from its solution, right? The nitrate solution. So it means zinc is more reactive. But if you see here, M have no reaction with zinc nitrate. Can you see here? Yes. So that's why M is less reactive compared to zinc. So zinc will appear first. Magnesium is more reactive. Then we have zinc, then we have F, and then we have copper. So that's why option D is the right option here. Okay, let's see question 63. The position of four elements in the periodic table are shown. Which element is a gas that displaces iodine from sodium iodide? So if you see carefully, they are asking about a gas. So A option cannot be right because A is a solid. They are metals and metals are usually solid. So now we are left with B, C, and D. If you see the D option, it is also not the right option because it's a noble gas. And noble gas don't react with other elements. They are already full. Okay, so they don't have to react. Now we are just left with option B and C. So this is actually sodium iodide. And if you see carefully, sodium metal cannot be replaced. This sodium metal cannot be replaced by hydrogen because B is actually hydrogen. Hydrogen is less reactive compared to sodium. But if you look for the C option here is actually chlorine. And we know that the reactivity of halogens, group 7 are called halogens. And the reactivity of the halogens increases down the group. Okay, and it is decreases down the group. So the reactivity of the halogens decreases down the group. So that's why option C is the right option here. Because C is chlorine. So chlorine is more reactive compared to iodine. Iodine appears here. So that's why the reactivity is decreasing. So C can displace iodine from its solution. So that's why we will get sodium chloride here and we will get iodine. So that's why option C is the correct option here. Let's see question 64. The diagram shows element W, X, Y, and Z in the section of the periodic table. Which statement about the reactivity of the elements is correct? So if you see here, we have X and Y and they belongs to group 1. Remember that the reactivity of the metals increases down the group, okay? And these are metals. So it means Y is more reactive compared to X. So can we find here? Yes, Y is more reactive than X. So C or D option can be right. Now let's see for the halogens, group 7. So remember that the halogens reactivity decreases down the group, okay? So the most reactive one should be on the top. It means W is more reactive and Z is less reactive. So W is more reactive than Z. So that's why option C is the right option here. So these were all the questions related to this chapter. I will see you in the next video. Up till then, bye-bye.